The crack of a pistol split the dusty air of Pine Creek, Wyoming, making Belle Rowan flinch, as if the sky itself had fallen. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Autumn of 1876 found her life collapsing faster than she could catch her breath. From the saloon porch, she watched heart in her throat as her brother Noah Rowan reeled and hit the dirt, blood streaking his jaw where the blow had landed. "Your sister, or your life," Rowan snarled. Flint Mercer, the wealthiest and most feared man in the county. His silver-streaked mustache twitched as he shoved his gun back into its holster. Belle's pulse pounded so hard it hurt. At 22, she'd dreamed of more than this hard-edged frontier town, but those dreams now bled away like morning mist. Noah, battered and desperate, lifted pleading eyes to her. "I'll marry her," he gasped, blood glistening on his split lip. "Give me till morning and the debt will be paid." The words cut Belle deeper than any bullet. Her own brother bargaining her like livestock. Flint's cruel grin showed yellowed teeth. "Sunrise at the church," he said coldly, "or I'll take both your lives." With a harsh jingle of spurs, he strode off, leaving Noah crumpled and Belle frozen in disbelief. Across the street, a lone figure leaned against a hitching rail, watching with eyes like flint catching fire. Beneath the brim of a weather-beaten Stetson, Clay Maddox tightened his jaw. He'd ridden into Pine Creek chasing cattle thieves, not trouble like this. But the proud tilt of Belle's shoulders, even as her world collapsed, stirred something long dormant inside him. As sunset bled behind the mountains, Belle paced the small cabin she shared with Noah on the edge of town. The single room felt like a trap, as she folded a few belongings into a worn carpet bag, hardly enough for the life Flint threatened to claim. "There has to be another way," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You owe him $500, Noah. Someone else must lend it." Noah slumped at their shaky table, nursing whiskey and the purple bruise Flint had left. "No one, Belle." "I asked everywhere. It's just one marriage Blackwell owns half the county. You'd never want. I'd rather die than marry that vulture," she snapped, slamming her brush on the table. "Everyone knows what happened to his other wives." A sharp knock rattled the door. Noah lurched up, hand to the empty holster Flint had seized as part payment. "Who's there? Name's Clay Maddox. I'm here about the debt." Brother and sister exchanged alarmed looks. Noah cautiously unlatched the door. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped inside, trail dust on his coat gun belt, worn smooth by long miles. His face, bronzed by wind and sun, softened when his clear eyes met Belle's. "May I come in?" His deep voice carried an unexpected gentleness. "You working for Mercer?" Noah demanded. Clay removed his hat, revealing brown hair streaked by the sun. "No. I saw what happened in town. Thought I might offer a way out." Belle drew her shawl tighter. "What kind of way out?" Clay looked from her to Noah. "You owe Mercer $500. $512, Noah said bitterly. "Might as well be 5,000. Clay reached into his vest and set a leather pouch on the table with a heavy clink. 550. More than enough to settle it, and some to spare. The siblings stared, stunned. "Why would you do this?" Belle asked, suspicion sharp in her voice. "What do you want in return?" "A fair question," Clay said evenly. "I want nothing from your brother." His gaze locked with hers. "But from you I want a promise." Belle's heart skipped. A promise. 1 year of marriage, he said. "I'll provide for you and treat you with respect. After a year, if you wish to leave, I'll arrange a divorce and give you enough to start fresh anywhere." Noah stepped closer, incredulous. "You'd marry my sister without knowing her. I know she deserves better than being bartered to a man like Mercer," Clay replied. "I've been looking to settle to build a real homestead. I need a partner, not property." Belle searched his steady eyes. Was she leaping from one cage to another? Yet there was no hint of the predatory gleam she'd seen in Flint Mercer. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "I'll put it in writing," Clay said. "Judge Eli Burke can witness it. I'll give you until morning. If you agree, we'll pay Mercer wed before he can interfere and ride out." When he left, Belle and Noah argued deep into the night. Noah, eager to escape Mercer's wrath, begged her to accept. She lay awake until dawn, heart-torn. But the stranger's offer was the only path left. Morning light slipped through the cabin window. Belle, dressed in her best blue cotton with white trim hair neatly braided outward composure, hiding a storm inside. Right on time, Clay appeared cleaner than the night before, yet still every inch a trail-worn cowboy. A wagon already packed with supplies waited outside. "Have you decided?" he asked without preamble. Belle lifted her chin. "I accept, Mr. Maddox, but I want every promise in writing." "Already done," he said, handing her a folded document. Judge Eli Burke had already signed the papers that morning. 1 year, Clay explained evenly, and if you choose to leave, you'll have $300 to start fresh. Belle. Rowan scanned the contract, impressed by its clear terms. Before she could stop herself, she blurted, "And if I stay past that year?" Something flickered in Clay Maddox's eyes. Surprise, maybe a spark of hope. "Then we work out a new life together as equals," he said simply. They found Flint Mercer slouched in the saloon, a glass already sweating in his fist, though dawn was barely gone. His bloodshot eyes sharpened when Clay dropped a pouch of coins on the bar. "Who the devil are you?" Mercer barked. The man settling Noah Rowan's debt in full, Clay replied, steady as stone. $512 as I understand. Mercer's hand twitched toward his holster. The bargain wasn't for cash, it was for the girl. The debt was the bargain, Clay countered coolly. "I'm paying it. Unless you'd like the law involved." Silence thickened. Mercer's gaze prowled from Clay to Belle and back to the money. At last he snatched the pouch and counted it out. "This squares it," he growled. "But I don't forget faces, especially men who meddle in my business." Clay's face never changed. "Noted. Good day, Mr. Mercer." Outside, Belle exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "He won't let this end here. That's why we need to marry and be on the trail within the hour," Clay said, guiding her toward the justice's office, with a steady hand at her elbow. The ceremony was swift and plain. Judge Burke, a balding man with gentle eyes, read the vows. Belle spoke firmly, masking the storm in her chest. Clay's answers came deep and sure. When Burke pronounced them husband and wife, Clay placed a brief, respectful kiss on her brow. Noah hugged his sister tightly. "I'm sorry, Belle, for everything." "Take care of yourself, Noah," she whispered. "And for heaven's sake, stay away from the cards." As Clay helped her into the wagon, she caught sight of Mercer across the street, his stare dark as thunder. A chill raced through her. "He's plotting something," she murmured. Clay followed her gaze and gave the slightest nod. "Which is why we'll ride the northern trail longer, but less traveled." They rolled out of Pine Creek, the wagon creaking under supplies, and Belle's few possessions. Clay rode beside her on a sleek chestnut gelding, eyes sweeping the horizon. Beyond lay mountains still capped in spring snow. For hours they traveled in companionable quiet, broken only by the groan of wheels and the steady breath of horses. Belle's thoughts churned with questions about the man who was now her husband, but pride kept her silent. At a clear creek, Clay finally broke the hush. "I figure you've got questions, Mrs. Maddox." The name startled her. It was true she belonged to no one yet. She was someone's wife. Several, she admitted, taking the canteen he offered. First, why would a man pay so much to wed a stranger? Clay leaned against a cottonwood, studying her. I've been wanting to settle. Got good land, but a ranch needs more than one pair of hands. I need a partner. There are easier ways to find a wife than rescuing a woman from a loan shark. Belle said, a faint smile teasing her lips. Maybe. But not many women would face the life I'm offering, he replied. It's a hard country we're riding into. And you think I'd manage it? I saw you stand up to Mercer, he said simply. There was fear in your eyes, sure, but fire too. He straightened and swung into the saddle. Let's keep moving. I'd like to make Miller's Creek before nightfall. The scenery roughened as prairie gave way to foothills. Belle watched Clay when he wasn't looking, the easy seat in the saddle, the constant alertness, the rare gentleness with his horse. The more she saw, the more she wondered about the life that shaped him. As sunset flared over the ridges, they reached Miller's Creek, a modest outpost with a store, a stable, and a handful of cabins. The proprietor, a broad man with a wild beard, grinned in recognition. Maddox, didn't expect you back so soon. His brows shot up at Belle. And with company? Clay nodded. Jed, meet my wife, Belle. We were married this morning. Surprise flashed in Jed Carver's eyes, but he recovered quickly and tipped his hat. Mrs. Maddox, welcome. We don't see many ladies out this way. Thank you, Mr. Carver, Belle said, warming to his easy manner. They rented a small cabin for the night. Jed's cheerful wife, Ruth Deacon, served hearty stew and fresh bread that Belle devoured gratefully. Later, inside the quiet cabin with a single narrow bed and a pot-bellied stove, Clay cleared his throat. I'll sleep on the floor. You take the bed. Relief softened her shoulders. Thank you. As she emerged in her nightrobe, he was already stretched on the floor, back turned. Mr. Maddox, she began. Clay, he corrected gently. Seems right, considering. Clay, she said, settling on the bed's edge. Why did you really do all this? The full truth. He was silent a long time. Then he faced her, the lantern light sharpening the lines of his face. I meant what I said about needing a partner, but there's more. My father was a man like Mercer, cruel, reckless. He ruined lives for sport, including my mother's. I swore I'd never be like him, and I'd stop men like him whenever I could. Belle absorbed his words, seeing him in a deeper, braver light. That's something to admire, she said softly. But still a heavy gamble for someone you barely know, Clay Maddox said quietly. Sometimes doing right means taking that gamble. He turned away, his voice softening. Get some rest, Belle. Tomorrow's another hard ride. Belle lay awake long after Clay's breathing deepened, trying to square the mystery of the man she'd wed with the plain contract they'd signed. 1 year, she told herself. 1 year she could manage, and when it ended, she'd be free with enough money to begin anew. It wasn't the life she'd once imagined, but it was far better than the trap Flint Mercer had set. Morning came sooner than she liked, the clatter of Jed Carver's trading post already in full swing. After a hearty breakfast with Jed and Ruth Deacon, they restocked supplies and set off as the sun lit the eastern hills. The trail climbed steadily into the foothills. Belle marveled at Clay's sure knowledge of every bend and rise. He pointed out old landmarks named wild plants and their uses and shared bits of local history. Slowly, the tension between them eased. Been in Wyoming long? Belle asked as they paused at midday. 6 years, Clay said, helping her down from the wagon. Came west from Missouri after the war. You fought Union cavalry, he confirmed. Afterward, there wasn't much left back home. The West felt like a place to start clean. He passed her a plate of cold biscuits and jerky. What about you? Always lived near Pine Creek. She shook her head. We moved from Illinois when I was 16. My folks believed the frontier held better chances. A shadow crossed her face. They never lived to see if they were right. I'm sorry, Clay said gently. Losing family never gets easy. It's just my brother Noah and me now, she answered. He cares for you, Clay observed, even if his choices leave plenty to wish for. A reluctant smile touched Belle's lips. That's kindly said. As they traveled on, their talk flowed easier. Clay told her about his ranch, the Double Arrow, nearly 1,000 acres of good grazing land with a steady creek. He'd built the house and barn himself, fenced where needed, and started a small herd. It's no show place, he admitted, but it's solid. I add to it a little every year. You've done a lot on your own, Belle said, impressed. I hire hands when the calves drop or during branding. The rest I manage myself. He glanced at her. Though having a partner will change that. The word partner, not wife, stuck with Belle. It meant equality, not possession, and she found herself liking that thought more than she expected. By sunset, they crested a ridge, and Clay reined in. There it is, home. Belle leaned forward, breath-catching. Below them stretched a broad valley wrapped in mountains on 3 sides. A creek wound through it like polished silver, and near its bank stood a strong log house with a wide porch, a big barn, and neat outbuildings. Smoke curled from the chimney. It's beautiful, she whispered, awe softening her voice. Best land in the territory, Clay said with quiet pride. That creek never dries, not even in a drought. They descended into the valley as dusk settled. A figure stepped onto the porch, an older man with iron-gray hair and a face carved by years of sun and wind. That's Boone Riker, Clay explained. He keeps the place running when I'm gone and makes sure nothing slips past us. Boone lifted a hand in greeting, eyes sharp with curiosity as he spotted Belle. Clay helped her down and made the introductions. Boone, meet my wife, Belle. Belle, this is Boone Riker, the best ranch hand and the worst cook in Wyoming. Boone's brows shot up. Then he grinned and tipped his hat. Mrs. Maddox, well, now that's a surprise. Boss leaves to catch rustlers and rides back with a bride. Life's full of turns, Mr. Riker, Belle answered, with a calm she didn't quite feel. Call me Boone, he said easily. Everyone does. Got stew on the stove and bread fresh from this morning. Figured you'd both come in hungry. You figured right, Clay replied with a grateful nod. Let's stable the horses and eat. While Clay and Boone tended the animals, Belle stepped into what was now her home. The main room was larger than she expected, centered around a stone hearth with sturdy furnishings built for use rather than show. Windows on 3 sides caught the fading light. She imagined curtains at those windows and a quilt over the couch, small touches to soften the masculine order. Clay came in brushing trail dust from his boots. Not much compared to what you might be used to, he said. It's far finer than the cabin in Pine Creek, Phil answered honestly. You've built something remarkable. Surprise and quiet pleasure crossed his face. Thank you. Let me show you upstairs. 2 bedrooms, take whichever you like. The upper floor held a small sitting area and 2 rooms. One was plainly his with a big bed and neatly arranged gear. The other, smaller but welcoming, held a washstand and a window that opened toward the murmuring creek. Belle set her bag there, already picturing how to make it her own. This will do just fine, Belle, Rowan said, setting her carpet bag on the neatly made bed. The washroom's downstairs off the kitchen, Clay Maddox explained. I put in a real bathtub last year, worth every penny. Belle brightened. That sounds heavenly after 2 days on the trail. I'll have Boone Riker heat water once we've eaten, Clay promised. He lingered in the doorway, hat in hand. I know this isn't the future you pictured, Belle, but I meant every word about building a partnership. Your say in how the house and ranch run will matter. The quiet honesty in his voice touched her. "Thank you. I'll do all I can to pull my weight." Supper turned out warm and easy. Boone's stew was plain but hearty, and the bread came out of the oven perfect. As the men spoke of ranch matters, fences needing mending, a mare ready to foal the herd moved north. Belle listened, piecing together how the place worked. Afterward, true to his word, Clay prepared a bath. Boone joined him on the porch with coffee, leaving Belle privacy. Sliding into the steaming water, she felt the strain of the past days melt away. Married to a man she'd only just met, hidden away on a remote spread, yet for the first time she sensed real possibility in this new life. Later, wrapped in her nightrobe, she tiptoed downstairs for water. Clay sat alone by the fire, a book open on his knee. Boone had already turned into his cabin by the barn. "All right," Clay asked, looking up. "Yes. The bath was exactly what I needed," she replied, filling a glass from the pitcher. "What are you reading?" He held up a slim volume. "The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Just came out. Jed Carver at the Trading Post saves new books for me." Belle's brows lifted. "I wouldn't have guessed you for a reader." A faint smile touched his face. "Because I'm a cowboy, I suppose so," she admitted. "It seems I've misjudged you more than once." "We've only just begun to know each other," he said. "Plenty of time for clearer judgments." Closing the book, he added, "Best turn in. Ranch mornings start early." Upstairs, Belle settled into her room, listening to the strange night sounds of the valley, until sleep finally came. Maybe she thought this unexpected path wouldn't be the disaster she'd feared. In the weeks that followed, life found its rhythm. She rose with the sun to cook breakfast for the three of them, then devoted herself to learning every corner of the ranch house. Clay had been right. The place was solid and well built, but it lacked a woman's touch. A week later, Ruth Deacon rode out with fabric for curtains, seeds for a kitchen garden, and warm companionship Belle hadn't realized she missed. As they worked side by side, Ruth said with a knowing smile, "Clay's a good man. Keeps to himself, but he's fair and steady. Folks around here trust him." "He's been very kind," Belle agreed, "but I still know so little about him." "He'll share in his own time," Ruth assured her. "Men like Clay don't give trust easy, but once they do, it's rock solid." Soon, Belle's little garden sprouted behind the kitchen, and Clay built a fence to keep out rabbits and deer, watching quietly as she worked the soil. "My mother always kept a garden," he said one evening while they sat on the porch, sunset blazing across the peaks. She believed there was healing in growing things. "Was she right?" Belle asked softly. He fell silent, then said, "She passed before I was old enough to ask." "My father—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "My father wasn't a gentleman. When I was 8, he beat her so badly she never recovered. Called it an accident, a fall down the stairs." Belle's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "I'm so sorry, Clay." "It was long ago," he said, his tone closing the subject. Yet later that night she found a volume of poetry on her bedside table, a book his mother had cherished. The small gift spoke more than words. As spring turned to summer, Belle threw herself into ranch life. She learned to ride with skill, rode out with Clay and Boone on short circuits, and soon took charge of the ranch books, her neat figures impressing Clay. "You've got a sharper head for numbers than most men I know," he remarked. "My father was a banker," she explained. "He taught both me and Noah, though Noah never had the patience." At the mention of her brother, Clay's brow darkened. "Heard from him?" Belle shook her head. "No, and I didn't expect to. He's always chosen the easiest road." "You deserved better from him," Clay said quietly. Their eyes met across the table, and in that silent exchange, something warmer and deeper took root. Belle looked away, her heart quickening. That night, restless, she noticed Clay leave the house and followed at a distance. He stood alone on a rise beneath a vault of stars, still as stone, a solitary figure who carried his own brand of loneliness. She wondered if he ever regretted their sudden marriage, or if he longed for something more than the bargain they had struck. Questions swirled as she slipped back inside, leaving him to the night. July arrived with searing heat, and the demanding chores of haying the ranch now alive with the deep pulse of summer work. Additional ranch hands arrived for the summer push, and Belle Rowan suddenly found herself cooking for 6 hungry cowboys. Clay Maddox worked alongside them, his shirt dark with sweat, as he heaved hay onto wagons. Each time Belle carried cool water to the field, she sensed Clay's eyes on her, his steady look impossible to read. One warm evening, after the crew headed back to the bunkhouse, Belle wandered to the creek to cool her feet. Clay appeared soon after, boots in hand. "Mind if I join you?" "It's your creek," she teased with a faint smile. "Our creek," he corrected, lowering himself beside her and sighing as his feet touched the water. "You've been working too hard. We ought to hire someone just to help you in the kitchen." "I don't mind," Belle said truthfully. "Feels good to have a real purpose." Clay studied her profile in the fading light. "You're more than useful, Belle. Since you came, this place finally feels like a home." The warmth in his tone made her turn toward him. "Thank you. That means a lot." For a breathless moment, their faces were close. His gaze lingered on her lips before he gently brushed a stray curl from her cheek. "We'd better head back," he said softly. "Tomorrow starts early." The near kiss stayed with Belle as she prepared for bed. Though Clay continued to honor the limits of their agreement, she couldn't help wondering what might happen if those lines blurred. August brought searing heat. The creek shrank to a silver thread, grass browned, and the restless herd demanded endless attention. Clay spent long days in the saddle, often returning after dark, worn, and dust-streaked. One night, Belle waited with a hot meal and troubling news. "Flint Mercer was at Jed Carver's post," she said as Clay entered. Ruth Deacon brought the message herself. "He claimed he's an old friend of yours." Clay's jaw hardened. Jed's a sharp judge of character. If Mercer's sniffing around, he's up to no good. Pushing aside his untouched plate, he added, "I figured he might try to find us." Fear stirred in Belle's chest. "What do you think he wants?" "Nothing worth hearing," Clay said, covering her hand with his. "But don't worry, he won't get near you. I promise." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her heart flutter. "I'm not the same scared woman he threatened back in Pine Creek," she replied, steadily. "This is our home. I won't be driven off by fear." A proud light filled Clay's eyes. "No, you're not the same. You've become every inch a rancher's wife." "Partner," she corrected with a small smile. "Partner," he echoed, his answering smile tightening something deep inside her. That night, Belle lay awake until she heard the familiar creak of a floorboard. Clay was walking the house, keeping watch while she slept. At dawn, he rode to the trading post. When he returned, his expression was grim. Mercer headed toward Laramie, but made it plain he'll be back. "Jed thinks he's hunting investors for some scheme using a supposed tie to me as bait." "What tie?" Belle asked sharply. "He's spinning a story that you're his daughter from a first marriage," Clay said in disgust. "Claims I stole you away without his blessing." Belle stopped short. "That's absurd. We both know he has no claim on me. People believe what suits them," Clay answered bitterly, and Mercer's gifted at sniffing out weakness. The threat hung over them in the days that followed. Clay asked Belle not to ride alone, and Boone began carrying his rifle whenever he checked the outer pastures. Still, life pressed on cattle, to move meals, to cook fields, to tend. One late August evening, A storm rolled off the mountains, delivering welcome rain and dazzling lightning. Belle stood on the porch, awed by the brilliant forks slashing the sky when Clay joined her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said so near she felt his warmth. "Both beautiful and a little terrifying," she admitted. A blinding flash split the heavens, thunder cracking right after. She instinctively stepped closer, and his arms circled her waist. Neither moved as the storm raged. "I've always loved nights like this," Clay murmured near her ear. "They remind me how small we are, next to God's power." Belle tilted her face up, raindrops misting her skin. "You surprise me, Clay Maddox. You present yourself as a plain-spoken rancher, but there's so much more beneath." He looked down, eyes dark with feeling. "How so? You could have married years ago. Why didn't you?" The question caught him off guard. "Never found the right woman, or maybe never believed I deserved one." "Because of your father?" she asked gently. Clay nodded, gaze drifting to the storm-lit hills. "For years I feared his violence might live in me. It seemed easier to stay hidden," Clay Maddox admitted, voice low against the drumming rain. And now Belle Rowan asked, her heart quickening. His eyes found hers, dark and steady. "Now I know better. A man decides who he's going to be every single day, with every single choice." The truth of it sank deep. Without thinking, Belle touched his cheek. Clay went still, breath-catching. "Belle," he whispered, half a question, half a prayer. She rose on tiptoe and kissed him soft as the rain spilling off the porch roof. Clay froze for a heartbeat, then wrapped his arms around her, returning the kiss with a tenderness that stole her breath. When they finally drew apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I didn't expect this," he murmured. "When I made that offer back in Pine Creek, I never imagined." "Neither did I," Belle confessed, "but I'm glad for it, whatever comes next." They lingered, watching the storm fade to a silvery mist that veiled the valley. When at last they went inside, something between them had irrevocably changed. At her bedroom door, Belle hesitated, torn between rising feelings and careful restraint. Across the hall, Clay paused too, his face shadowed by the same conflict. "Good night, Belle," he said, voice husky. "Good night, Clay," she answered, carrying the warmth of their kiss into her dreams. September cooled the valley, painting the trees in fire and gold. One crisp afternoon, an unexpected visitor rode in Noah Rowan, arriving without a word of warning while Clay was checking cattle in the north pasture. Belle's breath caught as her brother swung down at the hitching post, looking cleaner and more put together than when she'd last seen him. Noah. "What on earth are you doing here?" she exclaimed, brushing flour from her apron as she stepped onto the porch. He offered a sheepish grin. "Hello, little sister. Thought I'd see how you're faring, make sure this husband of yours treats you right." Belle's eyes narrowed. "How did you find us? And why now, after all these months, can't a brother visit without an inquisition?" "You look well. This life suits you," he said, though his smile wavered. Before she could press him, Boone Riker emerged from the barn, shotgun easy in his hands. "Everything all right, Mrs. Maddox?" "Yes, Boone. This is my brother, Noah Rowan." She turned back to Noah. "Come inside, Clay will be back shortly." In the kitchen, she poured coffee and studied him. His new hat and polished boots spoke of better times, but a nervous energy clung to him. "You still haven't told me how you tracked us down," she said. Noah toyed with his cup. "Ran into an old acquaintance who mentioned seeing you, said you'd married well, and were living north of Laramie." Belle stiffened. "What acquaintance?" He hesitated. "Fellow named Flint Mercer." The name chilled her. Concerned about me, she repeated incredulously. "That man tried to force me into marriage to pay your gambling debts." "I know. Noah said quickly, palms raised. It was unforgivable. But he swears he's changed, just wants to make amends. By sending you to spy on us, Belle shot back, anger flaring. Tell me the truth. What does Mercer want? Noah's bravado crumbled. He says there's more to this land than cattle. Something about mining rights. He wants a partnership with Clay, and he's lined up investors. And what's in it for him? Came Clay's voice from the doorway. Neither of them had heard him return. Startled, Noah stammered, Mr. Maddox, I presume? He'd take 20% of all profits and be recognized as the broker. Clay stepped to Belle's side, his presence steady and unyielding. And you, Noah? What's your cut for delivering the pitch? Enough to start fresh, Noah admitted, eyes down. Just a small finder's fee. And if we refuse, Belle asked, her voice tight. Why would you? Noah looked genuinely baffled. This could make you rich. This ranch is already wealth, Clay said flatly. It's our home and future. I won't gamble that on Mercer's schemes. Noah's mouth tightened. He warned me you'd be hard to convince. That's why he sent me first, figured you'd listen to family. And if that failed, Belle pressed, suddenly certain there was more. Noah hesitated, then admitted he just wants a meeting to present his case himself. Where is he? Clay demanded. Laramie, Grand Hotel. He gave me 2 days to arrange a meeting. And if you don't? Noah lowered his gaze. He holds gambling markers with my signature, enough to see me jailed for fraud. Belle's heart sank. So once again you've put yourself in Mercer's hands, she said quietly. And once again you expect others to save you. I'm sorry, Noah said, true remorse in his voice. I thought I'd finally turn things around. Flint Mercer offered me a job, Noah. Rowan admitted, eyes fixed on the floor. I thought he believed in me. By the time I saw his real game, I was already in too deep. Clay Maddox studied him, his voice calm but unyielding. You still have a choice, Noah. Ride back to Mercer and tell him we're not buying in, take whatever comes of it. Or stay here, stand with us, and help shut him down for good. Might even win back some of your sister's respect. Noah shifted uneasily. Deal with him how men like Mercer don't quit, Clay said flatly. If he wants a meeting, we'll hold it on our terms, not his. Belle rested a hand on Clay's arm. Are you sure that's wise? Mercer's dangerous. So am I when family's at stake, Clay replied, quiet but absolute. Family, Noah echoed, glancing between them. So this isn't just business anymore. No, Noah Belle said, meeting Clay's steady gaze. It's not. That night, after settling Noah in the spare room, Belle and Clay sat by the fire to lay out their plan. I don't trust Noah to keep our secrets if Mercer presses him, Belle admitted. I agree, Clay said. That's why we'll only share what we want Mercer to hear. A trap, she realized. Of sorts, he confirmed, taking her hand and tracing slow circles on her palm. I've sent Boone Riker to gather men I trust with my life. When Mercer shows, we'll be ready. Belle lowered her gaze. I've brought nothing but trouble to your door. Clay lifted her chin gently. You've brought light to this house, life I didn't know I was missing. I'd face 100 Mercers to keep you safe. Her heart softened at the raw truth in his voice. Clay, she whispered, leaning closer. Their kiss this time was deeper, sure carrying the weight of all they had come to mean to each other. When at last they parted, Clay cupped her face. When this is over, we'll talk about that year I promised you, maybe set new terms. Belle smiled, her heart full. I'd like that. At dawn, Noah set out for Laramie with a carefully worded message. Clay Maddox would meet with Flint Mercer at the Double Arrow in 3 days to discuss potential opportunities. The phrasing hinted at interest without giving a single commitment. The days that followed brimmed with quiet preparation. Boone returned with 4 men, Clay's old Army comrades, now ranchers and lawmen. Marshal Hank Rourke also rode in, already briefed on Mercer's record of fraud and intimidation. We'll keep it legal, Marshal Rourke assured them, but it's high time someone reined that man in. The plan was straightforward. Mercer would be allowed to pitch his deal, hanging himself with his own boasts, while unseen witnesses took note of every threat. The appointed day broke crisp and clear, the high peaks rimmed in early frost. Belle, dressed with care in a blue gown, Clay once said, matched her eyes. Pinning up her hair, she barely recognized the confident woman in the mirror. 6 months on the Double Arrow had changed her more than she'd known. Clay found her in the kitchen making coffee for their unwelcome guests. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm. "And you look worried," she countered, straightening his collar. "Will this work?" "It will." He clasped her hands. "Whatever happens, remember, you're safe here. This is your home for as long as you want it." The distant drum of hoofbeats ended further talk. Through the window they saw Mercer approaching with Noah and 2 hard-eyed strangers. Belle drew a steadying breath. Together, Clay asked, offering his arm. Together, she agreed, sliding her hand into the crook of his elbow. They stepped onto the porch as Mercer dismounted, still dressed to impress his predator's smile, unchanged. His gaze swept over Belle with a possessiveness that made her skin tighten before he turned to Clay. "Maddox," he greeted smoothly. "Appreciate you agreeing to this meeting. I think you'll find my proposal profitable." "We'll see," Clay replied evenly. "Come inside. My wife has prepared refreshments." The emphasis on wife made Mercer's eyes narrow, but he followed them in leaving his men outside at Clay's insistence. Noah trailed behind, avoiding Belle's eyes. In the main room, Mercer accepted coffee with a false smile. "You're looking well, my dear. Ranch life obviously agrees with you." "It does," Belle said calmly, taking her seat beside Clay. "I've found my true home here." Mercer's grin thinned. "All the better. Now to business." He drew papers from his coat and spread them across the table. "Your land sits over a rich copper vein. With the right investors, a mining operation here could dwarf anything cattle ranching can offer." Clay studied the documents with measured interest. Mercer went on smoothly. "Your role would be to facilitate. I have Eastern backers eager to develop Western resources. Together, we could turn this place into a fortune. For a modest share of the profits, I'll handle every permit contract and negotiation myself," Flint Mercer said, leaning forward with smooth assurance. "You'd keep full ownership of the surface land, of course. Keep ranching if you like, while wealth flows from beneath your boots." "Sounds almost too good to be real," Clay Maddox replied evenly. "The best chances often do," Mercer countered with a quick smile. "I've arranged similar deals all over the territory. Just ask Noah Rowan, he's helped me identify prime properties." Noah shifted uneasily but said nothing. Clay leaned back, his gaze sharpening. "And if I'm not interested?" Mercer's smile thinned. "That would be unfortunate. My investors aren't used to hearing no. They have ways of getting what they want. Is that a threat, Mr. Mercer Belle?" Rowan asked, her heart pounding, though her voice stayed calm. "Merely an observation, my dear," Mercer said, eyes sliding back to Clay. "Think carefully, Maddox. You're far from town. Accidents happen out here. Fires, rustlers, the kind of trouble that leaves widows behind." Clay's face stayed unreadable. "I know the risks of the frontier. I'm ready for them." Everyone thinks that, Mercer said with a shrug, "until disaster proves them wrong." His gaze lingered on Belle. "It would be a tragedy if anything befell your lovely wife. Pine Creek is full of such tales." Clay's hand settled firmly over Belle's on the table, a quiet pledge of protection. "I believe I've heard enough," he said, voice low. Mistaking Clay's calm for surrender, Mercer smiled sharply. "Excellent. I have preliminary agreements ready. All I need is your signature." "Not for an agreement," Clay cut in, rising to his full height. "For your arrest," The kitchen door swung open, and Marshal Hank Rourke stepped inside, badge catching the light. At the same instant, the front door burst wide, revealing Clay's 4 armed friends. Mercer's face darkened to fury. "What's the meaning of this, Flint Mercer?" Marshal Rourke declared. "You're under arrest for attempted extortion and making criminal threats. We have witnesses to every word you just spoke, along with sworn statements about your past schemes. This is ridiculous." Mercer sputtered, half rising, until one of Clay's men pressed him back into his chair. "Noah, tell them this was a fair business deal." Every eye turned to Noah. He trembled, torn, then looked at Belle and found his voice. "Mr. Mercer threatened to burn the ranch if Clay refused," he said steadily. "He also hinted at harming my sister. There's nothing honest in his plan." Mercer's face went purple. "A grateful whelp, after all I've done for you." "You've done nothing but use him," Belle said, standing beside Clay. "Just as you tried to use me. But that ends now." As Marshal Rourke recited the formal charges, Mercer's bluster gave way to cold calculation. His final look at Belle and Clay was pure menace. "This isn't over," he hissed as he was led away. "I have friends in high places. You'll regret this day." "The only regret I have," Clay answered evenly, "is not stopping you sooner." When Mercer and his hired men were taken off toward Laramie, quiet settled over the Double Arrow. Noah shifted uneasily. "What happens to me?" Clay turned to Belle, leaving the choice with her. She studied her brother, flawed, but still her kin. "That depends on you, Noah. Are you ready to start living different?" He nodded, humility softening his face. "I want to. I'm just not sure how." Clay surprised them both. "There's honest work here if you'll take it. Stay through the winter. Learn the trade. Earn your keep." Hope flickered in Noah's eyes. "You'd let me after everything?" "For Belle's sake," Clay said, "and maybe for your own if you prove yourself." Night had fully fallen by the time the last of Clay's friends rode off. Boone kept watch as Noah settled into a bunkhouse room. The house grew still again. Belle found Clay on the porch, stars glittering overhead. She slipped her hand into his, and he drew her close against the cool night air. "Thank you," she said softly, "for giving Noah a chance." "Everyone deserves a chance to be better," Clay replied, wrapping his arm around her. "Even me. You've nothing to prove," Belle assured him. "You're already the best man I know." He searched her eyes, a quiet hope shining there. "Good enough to ask you to stay, no limit, no end. Belle, will you be my partner for life?" Her heart swelled. "Are you asking me to be your wife in truth? Not just in name. I'm asking you to stand with me in everything," he said, taking both her hands. "I love you, Belle. I think I have since that first moment in Pine Creek when you held your ground, despite the fear." Tears of joy blurred her vision. "I love you too." "Yes, I'll stay. For always." Their kiss sealed the vow, deep, sure, and sweet beneath the endless Wyoming stars. When at last they parted, Clay rested his forehead against hers. "I never expected this," he whispered. "When I paid that debt, I thought I was giving you freedom. I never dreamed you'd return the same gift to me," Clay Maddox said quietly. Belle Rowan smiled, understanding every word. Sometimes the most priceless things grow from the least expected start. Hand in hand, they stepped back inside, no longer to a house of necessity, but to a true home forged in shared love. What had once felt like a one-year bargain now stretched ahead as a lifetime of promise, each sunrise another chance to deepen the bond they had chosen freely. Winter swept in early, laying a clean white quilt across the Double Arrow. Life slowed to the steady rhythm of cold months, mending tools, keeping the smaller winter herd near the barn, and readying for spring's inevitable stir. To everyone's surprise, Noah Rowan proved a steady hand. Under Boone Riker's gruff guidance, he learned to mend fence lines, care for livestock, and shoulder the endless chores ranch life demanded. The honest work steadied him, Though the lure of cards and whiskey sometimes flickered in his eyes, he fought it with a grit Belle had never seen before. As Christmas neared, Belle filled the house with pine boughs and bright ribbons determined to make their first holiday unforgettable. Clay watched her bustle about with quiet amusement, secretly planning his own gift. On Christmas Eve, after a hearty supper with Noah and Boone as guests, Clay handed Belle a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Merry Christmas," he said, an uncharacteristic hint of nerves in his voice. Inside a velvet box rested a slender gold ring, its diamond flanked by tiny blue sapphires. "It belonged to my mother," Clay explained softly. "The one thing of hers I managed to keep. I had it sized for you in Laramie last month." Tears brightened Belle's eyes. "Clay, are you sure this is your most treasured keepsake?" "You're my greatest treasure," he said gently. "I want you to have a true wedding ring." "Proper marriage," Noah echoed, blinking in surprise. Clay smiled without looking away from Belle. "We're renewing our vows in the spring, this time with family and friends as witnesses, and a real wedding night," after Belle added with a playful glint, making Noah sputter into his cider, while Boone chuckled. Later, when they were alone, Clay slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her hand. "I want to give you the wedding you deserve," he whispered. "I already have everything I need," she replied, leaning into him. "But I won't say no to a celebration." The warmth in his eyes promised joys that would carry them through the long winter nights. By March, green shoots peeped through Belle's garden, and newborn calves wobbled beside their mothers. A telegram from Marshal Hank Rourke brought even brighter news. Flint Mercer had been convicted of fraud and extortion, sentenced to 5 years in territorial prison. "We're finally free of him," Belle said, relief rich in her voice. "Just in time for our new beginning," Clay agreed, drawing her close. Their wedding celebration came on the first real warm day of May. Ruth Deacon helped Belle sew a simple but lovely white dress, and Jed Carver brought a minister from Laramie. Neighbors filled the double arrow yard, now garlanded with wildflowers and ribbons. Noah, sober and proud in a new suit, stood as Belle's family. Boone, polished and smiling, served as Clay's best man. When Belle walked toward Clay, her face radiant beneath a crown of spring blossoms, his heart nearly burst. This was no contract of convenience. It was pure love, freely given. Beneath an arch Clay had built with his own hands, they vowed to cherish one another all their days. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife once more, Clay drew Belle into a kiss that left no doubt of their devotion. Laughter, music, and dancing filled the ranch well into the night. As moonlight silvered the valley, Clay led Belle quietly to the house that was now rich with shared memories. In their room, truly theirs at last, he held her face between his hands. "I love you, Mrs. Maddox, more than I ever thought possible." "And I love you, Mr. Maddox, my rescuer, my partner, my forever," she replied, heart overflowing. Their kiss deepened passion unbound by former caution. As they lay together, Belle marveled at the distance traveled since that desperate day in Pine Creek, from strangers tied by necessity to lifelong partners bound by choice and love. Later, resting in Clay's arms with moonlight spilling across the quilt, she traced the lines of his face. "Do you ever regret paying my brother's debt that day?" He caught her hand and kissed her palm. "Not for a single moment." "Best investment I ever made. Even with all the trouble it caused," she teased. "Especially with all the trouble," he said, smiling. "It brought you to me. Everything else is just details." As sleep embraced them, Belle reflected on the wondrous road that had carried them here, a journey from a desperate bargain to the richest love imaginable, where a cowboy's single act of decency became the seed of redemption and a devotion meant to last a lifetime. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you.